Imagine waking up one morning to a world that no longer looks familiar. The cities are still standing, the markets are still open, people are still walking the streets, but something feels terribly wrong. Fear spreads quietly through conversations. Rumors travel faster than truth, and everywhere people whisper the same frightening name. A name that prophets warned humanity about for thousands of years. A name that represents the greatest trial mankind will ever face. That name is the false Messiah known as the Dajjal. For centuries, believers have wondered what life will truly look like when this figure finally appears. Many imagine only chaos and destruction, but the reality described in Islamic tradition is far more complex and far more terrifying. Because the world after the arrival of the Dajjal will not collapse overnight. Instead, it will slowly transform into a place where truth becomes difficult to recognize, and where even the strongest believers may struggle to hold onto their faith. Before understanding how the world will look after his arrival, we must first understand the scale of the test that humanity will face. The Dajjal is not simply another tyrant or political leader. According to the teachings of Islam, he will possess abilities that will confuse and deceive people on a massive scale. He will travel across the earth quickly, entering city after city, gathering followers wherever he goes. His presence will create a time unlike any other in human history. But what will make this period so dangerous is not only the power he appears to have. It is the environment that will exist when he arrives. Long before his emergence, the world will already be experiencing great turmoil. Conflicts between nations will increase. Moral values will weaken. Many people will become so focused on wealth, entertainment, and temporary pleasures that spiritual awareness will slowly disappear from everyday life. In such a world, when the Dajjal finally appears, many people will not recognize the danger immediately. Some will see him as a powerful leader. Others will believe his extraordinary displays of power prove that he has divine authority. And this is exactly how the deception will begin. Imagine a society where food becomes scarce and drought spreads across entire regions. Crops fail, rivers shrink, and people grow desperate for relief. Then suddenly a man appears who seems capable of controlling the rain. He promises prosperity, security, and stability. For populations already struggling to survive, these promises will sound like salvation. Gradually, entire communities may begin to follow him. Markets may reopen under his rule. Resources may appear where there was once scarcity, and cities may experience a sudden return of prosperity. To those watching from the outside, it may look as though the world has finally found a powerful leader who can restore order. But beneath this appearance of stability lies a much darker reality. Because the prosperity offered by the Dajjal will come with a price that few will fully understand until it is too late. Loyalty to him will slowly replace loyalty to truth. People will begin to measure success not by integrity or faith, but by their closeness to his authority. As his influence grows, society will gradually divide into two groups. On one side will be those who follow him willingly, convinced that he holds the solutions to every crisis. On the other side will be those who recognize the deception and refuse to accept his claims. These believers will face enormous pressure. They may be ridiculed, isolated, or even threatened for rejecting the system that everyone else seems eager to embrace. This division will reshape communities, families, and entire nations. Friendships will break apart. Neighbors who once trusted each other may begin to suspect one another. In many places, standing firmly on truth will become extremely difficult. Yet despite the fear and confusion, there will still be one of the most powerful weapons of deception. People often fear isolation more than danger itself. When entire societies begin accepting something as normal, resisting it becomes incredibly difficult. Yet history has shown that even in the darkest times, small groups of sincere believers have always existed. And during this period, those believers will quietly support one another, sharing reminders of faith and encouraging patience while the world around them becomes increasingly uncertain. But the story does not end here, because the arrival of the Dajjal will only mark the beginning of a much larger series of events that will reshape the future of humanity. As his influence grows stronger and his followers increase, The stage will be set for an extraordinary confrontation that will change the course of history forever. And to truly understand what the world will look like after the arrival of the Dajjal, we must continue exploring how societies, governments, and ordinary people will react as his power expands across the earth. When the influence of the Dajjal continues to spread across the world, the changes in society will become impossible to ignore. At first, many people may believe they are witnessing the rise of a powerful leader who can solve global crises. But as time passes, the reality of his rule will begin to reveal itself. The world will slowly transform into a place where survival and faith stand on opposite sides of the same road. One of the most frightening aspects of this period will be how normal everything may still appear on the surface. Cities will still glow with lights at night. Markets will still be full of goods. Governments may still function, and technology will continue to advance, but behind this illusion of normal life, a deeper transformation will be unfolding within the hearts of people. The Dajjal will not rely only on fear to gain followers. Instead, he will master the art of persuasion and temptation. Through promises of wealth, security, and comfort, he will gradually convince many people that loyalty to him is the only path toward stability. In times of uncertainty, humans naturally seek protection, and this instinct will become one of the most powerful tools of his deception. Imagine a world suffering from severe droughts, economic collapse, and widespread hunger. Families struggling to find food may hear that in the regions controlled by the Dajjal, rain has returned and crops are growing again. Livestock are healthy, and people are living comfortably. For those watching from afar, it may appear that he truly possesses extraordinary control over nature itself. Because of this, large groups of people may begin migrating toward the territories where he rules. Entire communities may abandon their homes in search of safety and prosperity. At first, these migrations may look like ordinary movements of refugees escaping hardship. But gradually they will transform into something far more dangerous, the formation of a society completely dependent on the authority of the Dajjal. Within these territories, the social structure of the world will begin to change dramatically. Positions of power will likely be given to those who openly support him. Media and communication channels may begin promoting his message constantly, presenting him as a savior who rescued humanity from chaos. Over time, younger generations growing up in this environment may never even question his authority. This psychological transformation will be one of the greatest challenges for believers who refuse to follow him. They will live in a world where the majority of people around them believe something entirely different. Their loyalty will not be to wealth or safety, but to faith and truth. Many of these believers will remember the warnings given by the Messenger of Islam, Prophet Muhammad, who advised the faithful to remain cautious of deception during the final trials. Among the teachings that believers will hold on to is the importance of remembering verses from the Qur'an, particularly from the chapter known as Surah Al-Kahf, which is believed to offer protection from the deception of the Dajjal. During this time, scholars and righteous individuals may quietly teach people how to strengthen their faith. They will remind communities that the true measure of success is not wealth or comfort but loyalty to the Creator. However, spreading such reminders will not always be easy. In regions dominated by the influence of the Dajjal, openly challenging his authority may carry serious consequences. Another change that may occur during this period is the breakdown of trust between people. Families may find themselves divided. Some members might believe the promises of the Dajjal and accept his leadership, while others may firmly reject him. These disagreements could lead to painful separations within households, friendships, and communities. History has shown that ideological divisions often create deeper wounds than physical conflict. When beliefs clash, relationships that once felt unbreakable can suddenly become fragile. In the world shaped by the Dajjal's influence, this emotional tension may become part of everyday life. Despite these difficulties, groups of sincere believers will still exist across different regions. They may not possess wealth or political influence, but they will share something far more powerful: conviction. Quiet gatherings may take place where people remind each other of the true purpose of life and the temporary nature of worldly power. Some believers may even choose to withdraw from large cities to avoid the overwhelming influence of the Dajjal system. In more remote areas, They will try to preserve their faith and protect their families from the widespread deception spreading through major population centers. Meanwhile, the reputation of the Dajjal will continue growing. Stories about his abilities will travel quickly across continents. Some will claim that he can control the weather. Others will say he can command the earth to produce crops instantly. Whether through supernatural events or carefully crafted illusions, these stories will reinforce the belief among his followers that he possesses divine authority. The most dangerous moment in this entire period will be when large portions of humanity begin to accept these claims without question. Once a society stops questioning power, deception becomes extremely easy to maintain. This is why the trial of the Dajjal is described in Islamic teachings as the greatest test mankind will ever face. Yet even during the peak of this deception, hope will not disappear entirely. Because long before these events unfold, prophecies also describe the arrival of a righteous leader who will guide believers during this dark period. His name will be known across the Muslim world as Imam Mahdi. The emergence of this leader will begin gathering sincere believers together once again. In a time when truth seems almost impossible to recognize, his leadership will help restore clarity and courage among those who refuse to surrender their faith. As the influence of the Dajjal continues expanding, tensions across the world will reach a breaking point. The contrast between those who follow him and those who reject him will become sharper than ever before. Entire regions may fall under his control, while others struggle to resist his growing authority. And as this global struggle intensifies, humanity will move closer toward one of the most dramatic turning points in history, a moment when divine intervention will change the direction of the world forever. But to truly understand how the story unfolds, we must look at the final stage of this extraordinary period, when the deception of the Dajjal reaches its peak and the long-awaited return of a great prophet begins to reshape the future of humanity. By the time the deception of the Dajjal reaches its peak, the world will be living through one of the darkest chapters in human history. His followers will believe that his rule is permanent and unstoppable. Entire regions of the earth will have accepted his authority, and many people will feel that resisting him is impossible. But according to Islamic teachings, this moment of overwhelming darkness will also be the moment when hope returns in a way that no one could have imagined. Among the believers who refuse to follow the Dajjal, a strong community will have already formed under the leadership of the righteous figure known as Imam Mahdi. He will unite those who remained loyal to their faith, giving them courage during a time when fear has spread across the world. These believers will understand that the struggle they are facing is not only physical but deeply spiritual. Their patience and faith will prepare them for the final stage of this historic confrontation. While the Dajjal continues traveling across the earth expanding his influence, the believers will gather in a place that holds deep importance in Islamic history. The city of Damascus will become one of the central locations where this story reaches its most dramatic turning point. Here, the faithful will stand together in prayer, hoping for divine help during a time when humanity seems completely overwhelmed by deception. Then, according to authentic Islamic tradition, an extraordinary event will take place that will change the course of history forever. At a moment when believers are gathered for prayer, a figure will descend from the heavens. This will not be an ordinary arrival. It will be the return of one of the greatest prophets ever sent to humanity, Isa Jesus. His return will mark the beginning of the end for the deception that has spread across the earth. Unlike the confusion created by the Dajjal, the presence of Isa will bring clarity and truth. Believers who witness this moment will realize that the long struggle against deception is finally approaching its conclusion. After joining the believers, Isa will lead the effort to confront the Dajjal directly. As news spreads that the true prophet has returned, the balance of power across the world will begin to shift. Those who followed the Dajjal out of fear or confusion may start questioning the reality they once accepted without hesitation. Eventually, the confrontation between truth and deception will reach its final moment. According to Islamic tradition, the Dajjal will attempt to escape once he realizes that his influence is collapsing. But the pursuit will end at a place known as Lod, where Isa will defeat him and bring an end to the greatest trial humanity has ever experienced. With the fall of the Dajjal, the world will enter a completely new chapter. The systems of deception that once dominated societies will disappear, and humanity will have another opportunity to rebuild a world based on justice and truth. Under the leadership of Isa, peace will gradually spread across the earth, and many of the conflicts that once divided nations will begin to fade. For believers who endured the difficult years of deception, this period will feel like the return of light after a long and exhausting night. The fear that once controlled societies will be replaced by a renewed sense of faith and unity. People will once again remember that true power does not belong to individuals who claim greatness, but only to the Creator who controls the destiny of all things. The story of the Dajjal is not simply a prophecy about the future. It is also a reminder about the dangers of deception, the importance of faith, and the strength required to stand for truth, even when the entire world seems to move in the opposite direction. Because in the end, the greatest lesson of this story is not about fear. It is about preparation, awareness, and the courage to remain faithful when humanity faces its most difficult test.